Welcome back to the channel. I am getting ready to make a rather quick, I think, rather simple-ish Father's Day card using this month's cards, tags, and more kit. This month's kit has some A4 card blanks already scored, ready to just decorate however you want. Some envelopes to go with those card blanks. Some embossed A4 kraft cardstock, wood grain, flowers, some bubbles, and some butterflies. And then some gold foiled pop-out pieces, some bows and some butterflies and some alphabet and a sheet of flowers. And to go with all of that kraft cardstock, there is a gold foil Transfer Me sheet in here. To get started, I'm just pulling out one of the card blanks, just folded it at the score line, pushed it down a little to make sure the crease was in there good, and then started the process of just picking out what little pieces I wanted to add to it for my Father's Day card. For my card, I'm really going to follow a more traditionally masculine design, but also a little vintagey. I picked out the star gold foil print pieces to make the bow. I just used the handle of a paintbrush to help get that curve nice and smooth instead of just trying to fold it or do it by hand. I just used some little dabs of art glitter glue to hold it together. Use a clip just to hold it while that glue sets up a little. And then I just finished pulling out the rest of the star print pieces, the little tails for the bow, and then the star strip that I didn't quite know where I was going to put the strip or the little medallions. I just figured they'd make it on there somewhere. I don't use a whole lot of the pieces on here, but I did just pick out a few pieces to get me started. And then I just finished putting my little bow together, putting the little rectangle center wrap around, and then attaching the bow to the bow tails. With my bow together and the center clipped, while I wait for the glue to finish setting up, I'm just going to cut down the wood grain paper a little smaller than the card front, just to use as a base layer, add a little bit of texture to my card front. I just randomly picked a spot I thought looked good. It's about 1 1/4 inches from the edge of the card to the first edge, the left-hand edge of that strip of the star print strip. And then I just fold the ends over to tuck them underneath, just so that they wrap all the way around. I didn't know exactly how I wanted to decorate the accompanying envelope or decorate the card front, so I just played around with a few of the pieces, played around with the alphabet, and then I decided to use that little bit, that excess bit of the star strip that I had, and just connect my 3 letters. They're more or less evenly spaced. I just kind of eyeballed what I thought looked like a good distance. I think it's about 1/8 of an inch or so. With my pieces picked out that I wanted to use, I just put everything else off to the side. I have all the pieces that I will be using from the card kit already popped out and ready to go. For a little extra dimension, I just inked around the edges of that wood grain piece just to get it to stand out a little bit more against the card front. And I'm using I can't remember what I'm using. I think I used gathered twigs for this. I think I'll make a note. If it's different, then I will just add a little note there when I get around to that, but I think it was gathered twigs. Sprinkle on some water and then just dry up the excess water so I can get that, the distressed look, the little splotchiness of the ink on there. I grab up some bits of double-sided foam, double-sided adhesive foam. I just cut a big section out for the center and then add a few extra squares along the edges of the wood grain. And that's just for a little bit of lift between that wood grain cardstock and the card front. I use the ink pad just to give a little bit of color and some distress look to the letters. Use my brush and the same ink just to age, I guess, that little bit of the bow there. And then just the same sort of process, ink, water, and then kind of dab off the excess off of the little medallions. I figured since I was already inking, I might as well finish up all of those little pieces now. I had some double-sided foam squares to the dad on there just for a little bit of extra lift on the card front. I still didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with those little medallions and with the bow. I started thinking it just looked a little too busy on the card front. I really wanted to keep this rather simple. I eyeballed keeping the edges relatively the same all the way around, and then stick the wood grain cardstock down to the card front. And after I did this, I realized that I just really liked having this simple, not overly ornate card front. And then that's when I came in to decided I'd probably decorate my envelope a bit more. I liked the idea of an outer packaging that was a little more decorated, a little more gift looking, I guess. I don't know how to explain it really. So I just used my ink, grunged up, dirtied up the card or the envelope. I added a couple layers just until I was happy with the end results. I got my envelope nice and dried up. Started playing around with the pieces a little bit more. I didn't know if I had put that bow together for no real reason yet. It wasn't really working out for me. The medallions weren't really working out for me. The bow looked funny to me just by itself. But then I kind of thought, well, this is what I'm coming up with. I started putting the pieces down with just some old glue dots I had. But I still couldn't just leave it as it was. It did not work. I was not happy. I added some light pencil lines on here. I didn't know if I was going to handwrite. I think I'd originally planned on just handwriting the Happy Father's Day on here. And then I went looking to see what kind of alpha stamps I had. And that's when I came back across that Tim Holtz stamp set. I peeled all of my pieces back off. Fortunately, my glue dots were very old, so they didn't have a very good grip. I got my stamp platform out, got my envelope in place, and started my stamping process. Now, for the most part, it was relatively easy and straightforward. It was only when I got down to actually having to stamp out the Happy Father's Day that it took a little bit of extra time. And I do use two different inks on here. I use the Stays On because it is a pigment ink. It is not water reactive. Once it's dry, it's permanent. And I started with that and stamped my little man into place. And then came back in and added a top layer of the gathered twigs. At least what I think is the gathered twigs, unless I've corrected myself since then. And I know that at the moment, you can't really tell the gathered twigs are there is a lighter color than the timber brown Stays On. And this is where it got to be a little bit trickier because all of the alphas there are a single stamp, I started trying to block off which letters I wanted. I eyeballed where I hoped it would land. At first I tried using just a tore up Post-it pad just to help me ink and not get it where I didn't want it. I decided to use that. I decided to use the whole thing as a more faded background. You can see the first H that I had decided to use is a little bit darker right now. And now I just go through the same process of stamping out all of the other layers, or all of the other letters, one at a time. I looked at this and I went, there's not a P on here. There is not a P on here. So I used the two R's that were next to each other and just took off the extra leg, covered it up with a little bit more of that Post-it pad, and inked up my two altered R's into P's. They were fortunately next to each other, so that did help a little bit there. I did have to work fast so that StazOn wouldn't completely dry before I was ready to stamp. I would clean up the excess. I cleaned up excess the best I could with my little, like, it's from Lawn Fawn. It's just kind of like a little sham type of thing for cleaning stamps. It works great. There's also not a Y on here, so I altered an A, added part of the I to make the bottom of the Y. It was just a lot of piecing together the stamps, piecing together the alphabet until I had the Happy Father's Day all the way spelled out. I did also eventually realize that this would go faster if I quit trying to use the Post-it pieces and just cleaned up around the letters, like so. So now that I've more or less covered how I ended up putting the Happy Father's Day all together, I am just going to fast forward through this entire process. So then after all of my stamping was done, then I came back in, used my spray bottle, and I really watered down the front quite a bit. You can see it pooling, and that was to activate all of those distress inks, to activate the gathered twigs that I had stamped on top of the StazOn for the man, to activate my distress marker that I had traced over with, and to help lighten up the block of alpha that I had behind my Happy Father's Day. And then came back and re-glued down the bow tie, so the little man would be wearing that bow tie, and then just worked those medallions around. I just played with them until I liked where they were. I don't know if I would have added them if I hadn't already inked them to match, but since they were inked and they were already here, I decided they can go on. And that was all there was to it. Super, super quick, really. After I had worked out exactly what direction I wanted to go, it went together very quickly, minus my piecing together the Happy Father's Day. I I would love to have those alphabets separately, but you know, I worked with what I had. A simple card, traditional masculine design, I would say, some inking, some vintageness. The craft stock in the kit is very sturdy. I loved working with it. It held up to the inking and the water very well. I hope you enjoyed this Father's Day card project that I made for you this week, and it gave you some ideas of what you can do with this month's cards, tags, and more kit. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications if you haven't already. Give us a thumbs up and feel free to share this video. Thank you, and I will see you again next week.